What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode 19 of the Barbells and Trails podcast. I am your host, Brett. I guess back with another episode, like I just said. That was terrible. Yeah, sorry about that. But welcome back. This episode, we're just going to kind of get into a few things. That happened this week, some things I was involved in with a few events, or things I went and watched and stuff like that. But yeah, I was actually I was happy about the support I did get for last week's episode. For me personally, I feel like that was probably one of my favorite episodes to record. Not necessarily even in the sense of like the topic or like, because the episodes with Noah and some of those that we did, especially like the first episode telling like our stories and how we met and stuff that neither of us had heard from one another, um, was a lot of fun, and that was fun for its own reasoning. But out of all the podcasts that I've recorded on my own, that was my favorite. I think part of it was the topic, and then part of it I feel like the overall result and the podcast itself just came out better than some of the other ones. Because I feel like with some of the other ones I was scrambling a little bit on what to talk about. I feel like the David Goggins one was pretty good. But this one I had a lot of fun with, and I hope if you guys did listen, you did enjoy the 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson. I am planning on eventually reading his sequel book, I think Beyond. I'm even contemplating going to a seminar of his, I think, in January. He's going to be down in Cincinnati. So I'm thinking about going down there to actually see him do a lecture in person, I think, about that book. So I will probably eventually technically do a second episode about that if I do that book. I'm going to read that book eventually, but I feel like I'll do a second episode to go over those rules as well, which I've read some of them. I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I was like, oh, okay, like these rules, just reading them make sense. But I'm like, part of the best part of like reading that book was getting Jordan's breakdown of his like his look at things and like why he made these rules and the real importance to it, and like getting deep, because when you look at some of the rules at base value, it's hard to try getting something really out of them. But when he took them and deconstructed them to really show its true meaning and what he meant, behind the words he wrote down, it was amazing. And so it was a great book to read. I'm actually about halfway through, I think, roughly halfway through a book that I plan on doing for next week's episode. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but I also did finish another book this week. So I've been reading a decent amount. The book I finished this week wasn't anything crazy, in the sense of like significance or learning, or necessarily being like a very long book either. It was Tom Segura's new book, I'd Like to Play by Myself, Please, I believe. I think that's the title. Yeah, I think he just released this book about a month or two ago. It was very interesting, to say the least. Definitely had me laughing out loud through parts of the book. I would say anyone should probably read that just for pure enjoyment, because it was a lot of fun. He kind of broke down, I guess, his life stories. I guess nothing to the extent of like someone like David Goggins, but just kind of like took down stories from his life and just a bunch of crazy experiences he's had with like running into certain celebrities at times when he was like getting into comedy, how he got into comedy and stuff like that, how he was in high school. And I think I've heard some of the stories he's talked about before, because he kind of talked about some of them, I think, on Joe Rogan when he was promoting the book release. And I think some of those stories might have been mentioned at one point in some of his stand-up. So it was kind of cool to get a bit better breakdown of it in his life, and it was very hilarious, and just the stories he came up with and stuff like that. It was awesome. At the end, it did have like a wholesome kind of breakaway to it, in the sense of he was like telling people to basically just like follow your dreams, and it's not always going to look kind of like things are going to go anywhere, or people aren't always going to believe in you, but just keep working and keep trying and stay dedicated. And so it was kind of a slight motivational feel good, in the sense of like talking about where he came from, in the sense of when he first started doing comedy, he wasn't making any money at all, like scraping to get by. He talked about some of the crazy situations he ended up in the sense of just trying to survive and taking a second job, and how he got into his podcast, which is now one of the bigger podcasts out there, and just everything he's been able to do, and how it all started from nothing, and he just had to slowly build it up, and then there was years of grinding, where now, I mean, yeah, now he's probably one of the most wealthy comedians out there. I mean, I guess if you compare him to like Kevin Hart, no, not at all, because Kevin Hart's doing movies and stuff. So, and he's made $20 million or something off of like one movie, where Tom Segura isn't necessarily doing that, but him and his wife have definitely made a lot of money. So he just kind of like showed his background a bit, and the stories of his mother and father and stuff like that were absolutely hilarious. And I definitely would encourage someone, if they just wanted a entertaining read and wanted to, or interested in comedy, and like is a fan of Tom Segura, I'd definitely say go read that, because it was very entertaining, to say the least. But I guess on to other other stuff that I've done this week. I was at the most interesting concert I've ever been to, at least at this point in my life, which this would have been 2 days ago. Yeah, Friday. And so me and Riley, Noah's younger brother, I think I've mentioned him at one point. He's actually going to be helping me today set up the studio, because I finally got basically everything I need when it comes to all the equipment and electronics to actually move everything and set a lot of stuff up, where next week I will be recording in there. As of having a video recording, maybe not yet. Still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do with that one. But yes, it's coming along. So I was able to take him to the Logic Wiz Khalifa concert Friday night, and it was his first ever concert. I've seen Logic in the past. Logic was my, I'm going to say, official concert, because it was the one I paid tickets for and I chose to go see. And that was in 2018. So this was a long time ago at this point. So it was really cool to go see him in concert again. And so I was able to convince him to go. I wasn't sure if he's going to be able to go, but it was quite amazing. The concert was awesome. Probably the best like vibe ever, in the sense of the atmosphere for the concert was great. Like, every concert you go to, like, there's typically a really good atmosphere, but like everybody was just having a good time and was hyped up and was just having a lot of fun. And I mean, that's typical at most concerts, but I feel like this one was very, I guess maybe a little more. I don't know. I think part of it is the music. Like, it also depends on the artist and how things are. Like, for Machine Gun Kelly, it's not as hyped because it's kind of rock. So it it was like a rock album. So it was a little different in the sense of um like the overall mood. Everybody was having a great time, but it wasn't like people weren't jumping up and down. People weren't like just jamming and dancing and doing as much when it comes to that stuff. People were just like in the moment, loving the music, loving the performance. And like when I went to NF, he's also last year, he's a great performer and a great rapper, but his stuff is a lot different. With his music is very heavy hitting in the sense of his lyrics and his passion and his overall like uh what's the word I'm looking for right here, like I guess his overall message and his music is a lot different, and it's not just like hype music. It's not music you listen to when you're necessarily at a club, stuff like that. He's an amazing artist, but it's like that's not his type. It's not his style, and so his and also it's just a less people at that concert in comparison. Um, it was really like just good, but in general the concert was great. I was actually able to get drinks this time, thank God. I mean, I would have had fun either way, but it was nice too, because I don't know if I mentioned on the last podcast when I went to MGK, I did not know until that night, and I found out my card was expired, and so I couldn't get a drink. And I think I had the same bartender there, because she said she was there for Machine Gun Kelly, actually make me a drink that night, so that was kind of interesting. Obviously, she sees so many people, she wasn't going to remember me. So I was actually able to drink a little bit that night, which technically would be the first time I actually drank at a concert. But it was a lot of fun. It was great. The opening acts, I was very surprised, were amazing. I forgot that 24 Karat Golden was the main opener, but there was Fed the God and another guy I can't remember. There was like three, I think, before 24 Karat Golden. And I've heard of Fed the God. I didn't necessarily know his music real well, but there was a few that I was like all their music was really good. Even very early into the night, and people were getting hyped up, and they were playing pretty good music, and it was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think what else happened as we worked our way through. So Logic was the one that ended up coming out first, and his performance was sick. And just like he did last time I saw him, at one point he came out and he's like, guys, this isn't the damn energy I need. He's like, it's like what like, I don't care if you don't know the lyrics, fucking get into it. Like move your arms, jump up and down, like something. It's like I wanna feel and vibe off of you guys as much as you do me. So it was really cool. He played a lot of music. Surprisingly, I don't feel like he played a lot from the album that he's technically touring, but I think part of that was just him not touring for 3 years. He played some of his bigger hits, and it was a lot of fun. Like, Logic was sick, just like he was when I saw him years ago. Not as much as not too much like playing off the audience as he did when he was here last time, but it also wasn't his event, so he was on a time clock in the sense of like he wasn't the one closing the show. So he wasn't necessarily like spending time in between sets doing shit as much, but he was actually sick, and he said he even had a fever that day, so he wasn't able to perform like he wanted to, but even then he did really, really, really well. And at one point he was just having a good time and trolling everybody else. He pulled out a t-shirt cannon and was launching shit. He actually pointed out someone in the front row that he recognized, I think, from another concert or somewhere. And I swear it was something similar to what happened when I saw him in 2018, where I think it was someone that saw him in Chicago doing something, and he gave her one of everything from the merch store for the evening, which is sick. And so he did that, and it was just a sick performance. I mean, he played Gang Related, which he wrote like, I don't even know, 6-7 years ago or something, like old stuff. He played a great variety in it. It was a amazing performance. I can't wait to see Logic again. I want to go to another Wiz concert, because as we get into this, you'll figure out why. But so they had, surprisingly, because this is the first time I ever had it, this was the first co tour that I've ever really seen. So they actually had like an intermission between Logic and Wiz, and they had a DJ come on, and he was playing some I can't even remember what songs he was playing, but he was just getting everybody hyped up as hell, going nuts, and people were just dancing and vibing, and it was a lot of fun. Met a few people. A lot of people were drinking. Like, I was, even though I had a few, I was fine in comparison, because there were some people. I mean, it's a concert. What do you expect? And considering who was there, between the amount of weed in the air and the amount of alcohol down people's throats, it was ridiculous. But met a guy named Donnie. I think he said it was his first concert, just like Riley's. So shout out to Donnie. He seemed pretty cool. He was having a good time. And then we met this other girl named Ella. So hopefully she got home all right. She had definitely been drinking, and at one point had actually picked up an empty beer can off the ground that had been crushed, because I guess she either lost or didn't have her phone on her. And it was during a song, I think it was one of Logic's last songs, where he wanted everybody to pull their phones out and like wave them in the air. So she's like, and then she looks over at me and Riley and was like, this will do. I'll have my phone. And she just started like waving a crushed beer can in the air like you would your phone with your flashlight out. So she was cracking us up. But she seemed to be having a great time. And then eventually she ended up kind of like coming over and talking to us. She kept getting our names mixed up, for one, but then she for some reason was trying to blow up the beer can back to its original form. I don't know why, but she was trying to say that she needed a bottle or something. And so she had tried getting us to blow the can up, which we obliged, just because it was like, sure. Like we both thought it was ridiculous, but it had us laughing the whole time. So that we would try to blow this can up. It's a beer can. It's not a water bottle, so you're not going to be able to do that very well. I mean, it was able to regain some shape, but she just kept like passing it between us. I was like, okay, your turn. All right, your turn. Until we kind of had it resembling a beer can again, which was hilarious. And at one point, when Wiz came out, which was spectacular, just the show and his atmosphere, and he was just in it, and he looked sick up on stage, and he was ready to have a good time. And I forget how big Wiz is. I mean, we looked it up that night. Like, Wiz has on Spotify, like, not concurrent, but monthly listeners is like 57 million, and Logic, and he's still a big artist. I mean, he hasn't released as much stuff or been in mainstream that much over the past 2 years, and he was sitting at like 11 or 12, which is still a lot. And at times I feel like that's definitely been a lot higher, but it just shows that like how big Wiz Khalifa still is. Like and I don't listen to his music a lot, but it was the songs, the performance, the atmosphere. 100% would go see Wiz again if I got the opportunity. And he uh it was interesting. At one point during one of the songs, I think he was playing. Oh, what song was it? Let me think here. He played a certain song, and Ella, I think he's playing "You and Your Friends," and Ella, the girl, is just talking about she grabbed me around the neck, like putting her arm around me, but was basically kind of holding me in a chokehold in a headlock, dancing to the song. And at one point, I could tell her friends were just trying to keep her under control, because she was having a great time, but she was definitely either can't handle her alcohol or had drank more than everybody else. And so she was at one point talking to us, and then at one point she like jumped into another group of people and just like joined the group and just started like dancing and stuff. I think at one point I saw her end up on someone's shoulders. Like, she was having a good time. And Wiz, his performance was absolutely like ridiculous. And at one point he was just standing there like stripping and licking the air, which was interesting to say the least. And all the girls like yelling and shit. It was interesting. And Riley's just like, "What the fuck is happening?" And at one point he threw like a bunch of inflatable like balloons that were joints, and I think it was what it was for his weed brand or something. And then he like something you would get like playing a carnival game, and they like threw those off stage and a bunch of stuff like that. And then in between one of the songs, I can't even remember which song it was, and I kind of wish I recorded it, but he grabbed a smoke cannon, put it between his legs, was stroking the gun, and spraying smoke out the end of it. And then at one point ended up on the ground, basically humping the air, spraying smoke from his crotch with the smoke gun. And I think everybody was just like, what the fuck is happening right now? But it was like laughing and cheering, and it was just hilarious because it's like, what the, like, I mean, exactly, like, what the fuck's happening right now? And it was just cracking everybody up because I don't think anybody was expecting that, but it was really, really funny. And at one point he did end up shirtless, so, but it was a sick concert. I'm trying to think what else he did. But like, he played Black and Yellow, he played a lot of his old stuff too, and was like working his way into his new album. I guess when everything kind of went to shit. So if you live locally, you would have seen or heard about what happened. And let's just say the concert ended abruptly. There was a rumor that there was a gun and that there was shots fired. So I guess I'll just go to what I knew at the moment that night and kind of replay it in my head. So when everything was going down, it was probably about 10:30. So there's probably about at least a half hour or more to the concert. And I kind of heard a commotion behind us, and we turned around and people like erupted in like a 15-yard circle. And then like a bunch of security guards came up and was like looking around, but I mean, we didn't see anything. I thought like there was a fight or something going on. And then but everybody's just like, what the hell is happening? At one point people started filling in the circle because they're like, let's just have a good time. And people were like dancing and singing. And then kind of out of nowhere, we look over to our left and see the security guard sprinting, I really don't know why. It doesn't make sense even at finding out like afterwards. But like the security guard and a bunch of people just start sprinting down and on the main drag going around the pavilion, basically like heading like towards the exits. And me and Riley, we just stand there. Like we I think out of like considering what the situation could have been and everything that was happening, we probably handled it almost in the most nonchalant, calm reaction you could have had. And part of it was because I didn't see any reason for freaking out because I had not seen any weapons, heard any gunshots, or really knew what was going on. So I didn't make any abrupt decisions. So we just kind of like stood there for a second, like for a minute or two, just kind of being like, what the hell just like, why is everybody running? Like the lawn cleared so fast. It was kind of mind blowing because this all started in our section. And at one point we end up like sitting down because they're like, just in case, let's just not make ourselves obvious. There's a bunch of other people sitting and we're just trying to still assess what the hell was happening because people were just sprinting out of there. I mean, it looked kind of like the place was almost as full when Machine Gun Kelly was there. So there was probably, I would say, roughly 17,000 people. So there was a lot of people there. And it was, I really don't know. So we just kind of hung out. And I think someone, while running, had landed on a cup or beer can or something and made a popping noise. Like it's 100% what it was because just how it sounded. And I saw and heard someone not far from us been like, oh dude, that's a gunshot, we gotta get the fuck out of here. And considering I was being very rational about it, I knew it wasn't a gunshot. Like it would have been a lot louder, and I had never heard any shots fired to begin with. But the thing was, at the time, no one knew what the hell had just happened or what was going on. But at that point, like, Wiz got pulled off a stage. The concert was over, so we were like, okay, well, we better just start heading out ourselves. So, like, we're just walking. We're just chilling, walking out. And we talked to some security guards. We talked to some workers trying to see if they knew what the hell just happened or if they had any idea. And everybody was kind of in the dark. No one had any clue what was going on. And it was so funny because we ended up talking to a few guys also walking out very calm and nonchalant. And he's like, bro, this shit happens on the west side all the time. You people need to calm down. and shit like that. And I was like, I mean, yeah, you got a point. But I was like, shit, I didn't see or hear anything. So I really don't know what the reaction's about. And he kind of said the same. Like, we ended up asking a bunch of people. And everybody had the same rumor, same idea, where they at least thought a gun was maybe pulled or flashed, and then it kind of caused a chain reaction of panic. But as for people thinking like there was gunshots, I was like, I swear we would have heard it, because I mean, the concert's loud, but you would have probably distinctly heard a gunshot. And so we just worked our way out of the arena and headed back out to our car. Like, people had jumped fences. People jumped certain exits that weren't exits to then have to climb back over fences to actually get out and back to the parking lot. I heard that people had ran into the fields nearby. Like, people were having issues trying to find their cars. I think because people were in such a panic. Like, I saw people breaking down and crying, a lot of people on their phones. And I think it was more out of fear because they didn't know what the hell just happened. But I think a lot of it was just people overreacting, being paranoid and drunk and high, that just kind of caused like a mass hysteria almost to take over, because I still had no reason for me to like really freak out or act that way. Like everybody's just like, well, what the fuck? I guess the concert's over. Let's just get out of here at that point. And so we worked our way to our car. We didn't even try leaving probably for about 45 minutes because traffic was so messed up. Cops and ambulances and a bunch of people showed up. And then also considering that people were trying to leave like half an hour before the concert was supposed to let out. No barriers, I don't think were really set up yet, so they had to like figure that out. It was a mess. So I was like, we're just gonna wait. We're not gonna get out of here. Like, I think there was a guy that we actually talked to in a car that ended up sitting basically in the same spot for about 15 to 20 minutes. So I was like, why the hell are we gonna get in our cars and try to even leave? Like, it's pointless at this point. And it was interesting. And then we got home. And we were both like, well, great concert. Could have ended better. And I think we both thought that. And it is what it is at that point. I think everybody's more upset that the concert just got ended so abruptly. So it was just, I think we were just kind of disappointed that we weren't able to enjoy the rest of the concert. And I think everybody was. But it was, so we got home and we just, we were like, well, I guess we were trying to look at the news, trying to see if they had figured anything out kind of on our drive back. And we ended up getting back. We're just like, well, we ended up just getting back and was like, well, I guess we'll just find out in the morning and see what the hell we hear. And so we decided to just go to bed, and he went home and I went to sleep. Woke up in the morning, my mom texting me, my sister calling me, all sorts of shit, because it had spread so quickly already. And I ended up like reading a few articles, and they ended up saying that there was no weapons found. As far as they're aware, there was no there was no shots fired. There's no weapons found anywhere. They searched the entire property, and 3 people ended up in the hospital. But the only reason they ended up in the hospital was for injuries from, I think, fleeing at the beginning, because there was such a panic that someone either got like ran into or possibly trampled, or maybe jumping the fence, got cut. Or some, like 3 people ended up going to the hospital for minor injuries. So it was just kind of a big mass hysteria, like panic, overreaction to the situation. And it just kind of, because of that, it just kind of made it where everybody reacted that way. And so it just kept going. But it is what it is. I mean, it was a great concert. I wish we got to finish it out, because I feel like Logic would have came back out and they would have done a few songs together. But it just, I was not expecting an ending quite like that. And for Riley to have his first concert in that way was kind of crazy. But it is what it is on that one. No one really got hurt. No one was shot. So that's all that matters. And so, I mean, we were good there. But speaking of, I guess, people getting injured, yesterday I watched the KSI boxing event, pay-per-view. So I ended up watching that. I haven't watched a boxing event here in a while, or most pay-per-view fights, because it's like I'm down to watch a fight every now and again, but when everything's pay-per-view, it's kind of annoying, especially if you already got to have a subscription to a certain provider, blah blah blah. It's just kind of like a weird way they do it, I feel like. And so I watched it. It was quite amazing. A lot of good fights. I'm trying to think who all fought. JJ and Swarms, the first fight, not necessarily the hardest opponent, and he can even agree to that. Not only that, but he had only been training. His opponent had only been training for, I think, 2 weeks prior to the event, so he had not had a lot of boxing experience. He still put up a decent fight and made it a little challenging for him, and JJ won that one pretty easily. So that was the first fight of the night. As for everybody else, I didn't really watch the next couple. I did see a clip from Salt Poppy. I think he like knocked this guy out within 30 seconds of the match, which was kind of ridiculous. I think he's a TikToker. I don't totally know who Salt Poppy is, but he KO'd a guy. And then the last like 4 fights were the ones I was more interested in, which was King Kenny and Faye Sensei. I believe I should have the card pulled up, but I don't. That one went pretty well. It ended up being judge's decision, and there was no KOs, nothing like that. It came down to points, and I think everybody watching thought that the judges had fucked up on that one, because Kenny did well, and he did fight well, but in the sense of how many blows and how many like just who got hit the most and who was aggressive and who probably fought the best, it should not have been awarded to him. Like, they read out the scorecard and then said that Kenny won, and even he looked shocked. And I think that Face Sensei should have won that one. Just off of the points and how the match went. Like, it was a good fight, and Kenny did good, but I think everybody agreed that he shouldn't have necessarily won that. Even if you wanted him to, when it comes to being real and upfront with how the fighting actually went, it was obvious who won, and when it came down to it, it didn't end up that way, which was weird. The next couple fights, I'm trying to think who was next. So next was Deji and Fuzi Tube, right? Yeah. And so Deji's KSI's younger brother. He's lost 3 fights previously, all for different reasons. He fought Jake Paul. That was his first fight originally, and he actually did pretty well against him. And then the next one after that, he was just not in shape at all, which was, I think, not Taylor Holder, Vinny Hacker. He just was not in shape and got tired very quickly, and it just kind of, that's one reason why he lost. I think he has good power and technique, but he just gassed out immediately. And then the next fight, he lost a lot of weight, which was with Alex Wasabi. Lost a lot of weight. Technique was better. He had more energy, but then he just like hardly threw any punches. So he ended up like losing basically off of points, because I believe because he just did not throw shit. This fight, he came out aggressive as hell, and he fought amazing. Like, it was a good match in general, but he kept on the aggressive side. He was on the offense almost the whole fight, and he was landing blows. Like, by the end of round 2, or I think almost like at the start of round 2, Fuzi's left eye was already swelling up pretty bad, and he ended up with a bloody nose, and like, he's bleeding everywhere. Like, it was a good fight. He got knocked down a couple times. Like, it was a really good matchup, and Fuzi looked good. It seemed like he might have not necessarily, like, he lost a lot of weight and he had a great transformation, but I don't know if he necessarily had the boxing technique and the training down when it came to the fight itself. I think athletics, he was looking really good, and he was good, but it was hard to say if he focused on the technique too much. And so it was really cool because he ended up winning KO because his team, Fuzi's team, threw in the towel after he got wailed on. And it was An amazing fight, probably one of the best ones of the night. And then the second co-event, or the second to last fight, the co-event was Slim and Face Temper, and it was a good fight. But Slim, I don't really know who he is. I feel like his technique was a little rough, but at one point when you get in, technique doesn't necessarily matter. If you can land blows, that's the big thing. And it was a pretty good fight. Like, they ended up in some brawls. Like, it kind of seemed like a street fight at one point where they're just beating the shit out of each other. And he just happened to land some really, really clean punches, just getting through Temper's defenses when he dropped his hands, and he knocked him out. I think it was the only one where there was another fight that I just said that got like an actual TKO, but he got through and got him right on the jaw, and Face Temper just went down. Like, it was brutal. It was hilarious. The whole time watching, you could see the Sidemen and a bunch of those guys, which I've watched for years. So, like, all those main dudes that are JJ's best friends, one of Deji's close friends too, when it comes down to it, and have kind of been around him for years. And Logan Paul was like right next to the stage, and some of these guys, and you see him in the background, and during parts of the fights, I'm even watching the background because I'm seeing some of their reactions, especially at like the highlight clips, and it's hilarious. Like, you just see like Logan just eyes wide as hell, just like, what the hell? Like, he just got knocked the hell out. And it was really cool. So I think it was a good fight. It was a good event. I think everything was really entertaining. But then it came down to the final match, which was JJ, KSI, and Pineda, I think was his last name. Supposedly a professional boxer from Mexico. And they came out, the dude's 6'3". I think they weigh roughly the same weight, but the dude looks like a stick in comparison. Like, he's bigger in the sense of he's about 4 inches taller, but he just, muscle mass wise in comparison, like the ratio, way off. JJ came out swinging, and because he knew he had to kind of prove something, and I think he did to an extent. I don't think the match necessarily went like anybody thought. Like, even JJ was kind of like, what the hell? So when they first round, almost within the first 15 seconds, JJ's throwing punches, and I think he gets him with a pretty good body shot and gets him kind of in the side of the head at one point. Not even necessarily super clean blows. And immediately the dude's like kind of knocked back a bit, not even being hit necessarily in the head that hard. And he starts complaining about back of the head, this and that. And like yelling at the ref. And like at one point he got down on one knee. I think technically when it comes to knockdowns, he was probably knocked down like 5 times throughout the match, which typically they call it. But I think even the judge was like, dude, you haven't even fought yet. And you're trying to, like, you've barely been hit and you're like falling over and doing this and that. Like, I think everybody was really embarrassed by that in the event. I think even JJ was really embarrassed because he didn't have a good opponent. Like, I think he thought that this dude was going to put up a fight, and he just really didn't. Like, I don't think he hardly landed any punches, and JJ was wailing on him pretty well. Like, I think he got him more in the body than he did in the head. And the dude just, like I said, like he was taller, but they were the same weight, and the dude just didn't have muscle. And I feel like he could just not take the hits hardly at all. And he ended up complaining like the whole time. He got down on one knee, and I think the ref at one point was even kind of annoyed with him because the announcers were like, why aren't they just calling it? Like, this dude's like giving up, but the ref was not like giving a shit. I think even the ref was like, dude, you're here to fight. You're complaining over hardly anything. Get your ass up and throw some punches. Like he's not hitting you in the back of the head. Like there might have been, I think there was a few that even the announcers, when they look back at some of the clips, they're like, okay, there might have been at least like a handful in here, just a small group where it's like, okay, there's a couple of these where, yes, I guess you could have called back of the head. But they even said, they were like, well, when you're leaning forward, the arm is going to go around your head, when considering how he was fighting and that he kept leaning into it. So his arm was missing. And then there were several where it was like, it was the side and he was complaining, or where JJ's arm completely missed and it was like his arm, like his forearm and bicep was what hit him in the face and the side of the head. And then he would keep calling like back of the head. Like the guy was, it was kind of embarrassing. I think everybody's kind of like, damn. You could see that JJ had improved tremendously from his last fight, which would have been, I think, 3 years ago. And between his technique, his overall form, his power, his agility, like his overall fitness, he was sick and he performed really well. Sadly, his opponents sucked. Like I think his first fight, he had someone that had more grit to him than the other dude. Like it seemed like, considering this guy is a quote unquote professional boxer, it didn't mean anything last night, because it seemed like every time this guy got hit, he would like grimace and like didn't want to be. And it's like which I mean, you don't want to be hit when you're in the ring, but in the sense of like he was like scared. And it's like, do you not know what the hell it is you supposedly do? Like, you know what you signed up for. At one point, some people think he might have just been in there for a paycheck and it was trying to get the hell out of there. And that might have been true, but they ended up calling it KO. And I don't think, I think JJ wanted a KO. I don't think the fight necessarily went exactly like he wanted. I think he did want a challenge. And at the end, he did call out people. He called out Slim. He called out like Tyson Fury. He called out, I'm trying to think who else he called out. Austin McBroom, I think. A few other people. He called out a lot of people, and even the announcers and several people realized that he didn't call out Jake Paul, which has kind of been a build-up almost for the past 3 years, where they've always had a back and forth and a hatred for one another. But I think even JJ realized, considering these fights, that these two matches weren't a challenge for him, in the sense of like yeah, he got in the ring and he got into it and you could tell he enjoyed it and he was in his element and he wants back into it. But he also realized that those guys weren't a challenge for him, where he could necessarily say that, hey, I got 2 KOs, technically, I'm gonna go fight Jake Paul. And I don't even think that necessarily some of Jake Paul's opponents were necessarily good opponents either, but in the sense of like some of them weren't super challenging for him either. So I think that's one reason why JJ wants to fight at least 1 to 2 other people before he works his way to Jake, to actually give himself a challenge to work his way up. And he even said last night that he plans on fighting, I think, in January. But at this point, obviously, don't know who. It just kind of depends on what it was. But in general, the event was kick-ass. It was good. There was a lot of really good fights. And like, even some of the announcers were like, I think one used to be a boxer, one is a professional boxer that actually fights, I think, in a couple weeks. And he was like, considering everything and the audience and everything you guys were able to do, he's like, I was happily surprised by the turnout, the effort, the skill, just everything. It was a good event. So it was really cool to see. I think it was one of the first, I think it was basically the only other really big boxing event for YouTube boxing this year. And it was very entertaining. I was happy for everybody that won, and happy for JJ and Deji, because Deji had lost three fights, and he really wanted that dub, and you could tell. But he fought and he got what he worked for, and it was quite impressive. But speaking of, I guess, other recent news before I really start getting into the end of the podcast this week, I did want to go over a few news things that I saw. Nothing crazy. And one of them was, well, I think recently in the news that there was the talk for the college credit, 10 grand, kind of being wiped from people's slates. I've heard that it's been canceled, but I haven't kept up on it enough to really know exactly what happened. So it's kind of interesting. I hope something like that goes through. I don't think college should completely necessarily be wiped from people's situations. I think it's just, in general, the prices and like, I don't understand why things keep going up like they do. Like, I guess I understand, but you feel like there should be like more of a cap on it in some way or another, considering what it's supposed to be meant for. And you have some colleges charging ridiculous amounts. I think the average student debt is, or federal student debt is, I think, about $35,000 roughly, throughout the country. Like, that's like the average, which is not good. Like, this one reason why I didn't want to go to college was I didn't want to rack up debt for something I didn't know I was going to use. And so it's, hopefully something gets figured out with it. I mean, it does suck because it puts people at such a young age in such a hard predicament, because it's like, you could be 30, have a good job, and want to necessarily get like let's say a loan to buy a house. And it's like, sometimes that's hard for you to even get, because you got to have a credit score. You got to have all this other information, history of like income and all this. But then when it comes to trying to go to school, you could go to a very expensive school without any work history, without any money, without any credit, and immediately get like $200,000 in loans or some crazy shit. And it's just, the system with it's just kind of weird, and I feel like a little backwards at times. But I guess what was in the news this week besides that was mushrooms for alcoholism, which there has been studies done at other places, but it seems like more and more is happening. I mean, Oregon's basically has decriminalized a lot of stuff. It's being decriminalized in other states, but this is what's been in the news. A New York University study found that psilocybin, the psychedelic compound in magic mushrooms, paired with therapy, may treat alcohol abuse. 93 alcoholic patients split into two groups. The first received 2 psychedelic trips, up to 12 therapy sessions, and the second received therapy and a placebo. Both groups reported 50% less heavy drinking after 4 therapy sessions. Those who took psilocybin drank an additional 40% less, up to 32 weeks after the first trip. Those who didn't begin to drink slightly more. And 2 times as many patients treated with psilocybin quit drinking than the members of the placebo group, which I think there's a lot to be had with psilocybin eventually. I think there can be a lot of uses for it, so I am curious to see what happens in like the next 5 to 10 years with it, in the sense of medical purposes and studies and just everything that it can be used for, where it's been shown to possibly have effects on PTSD and treatment with that. It's very interesting to see what happens. Not only that, oldest human ancestor possibly found. New findings suggest that the oldest human ancestor to walk on 2 feet did so 7 million years ago. The findings refer to a 7 million year old fossil that sparked a debate about whether or not being walked on 2 feet. New findings from its leg bones strengthened the argument that it did, therefore, branched off from apes and is a human ancestor. The previous oldest ancestor is more than 1 million years younger than the newly discovered fossil. If this being did walk on 2 legs, it would imply that upright walking was among one of the first traits to distinguish humanoids from apes. It's pretty interesting. I thought I saw something like that earlier this week. Not even that post necessarily. There's a few other things that I've also seen. Uh, okay, so synthetic mouse embryos created. I don't even know what the hell this would be used for exactly, but um, California Institute of Technology lab created a mouse embryo without a sperm or an egg. The researchers created a synthetic embryo by mixing sperm cells with two other cell types. At 8.5 days, several synthetic embryos were indistinguishable from normal ones. They develop a beating heart and a head. Researchers hope to use the process with human stem cells to explore why human pregnancies are lost early on and why 70% of in vitro fertilization attempts fail. Testing on real embryo raises a range of ethical considerations. Interesting. It's curious to see kind of where that goes, but synthetic embryos, that's weird. I mean, it's science is amazing, and it's just hard to ever see what exactly is in the near future with what we're going to be able to do. California is nearing a vote on a law that would ban the sale of gas-only cars in the state by 2035. I mean, I'm down for that, but they need to then also have clean energy production in the state. Otherwise, that's pointless because you still might be using fossil fuel in the sense of how you're powering your vehicle. If you still use fossil fuel plants and you don't use nuclear, solar, or wind, it's still dirty energy, it sucks. And I feel like that's one reason if I ever do buy an electric car, if I was going to power it, I would want to have solar panels on my home. So even if not all my electricity went into that, it made it a better situation. Okay, so the plan would be the most ambitious limit on car emissions in the U.S. It would set strict deadlines so that by 2035, all new cars must be zero emissions, with some plug-in hybrid exceptions. Cut that out. The ban would not apply to used or out-of-state cars. Officials say the plan will cut car emissions 50% by 2040. Cars currently emit 40% of California's emissions. California is the U.S.'s biggest buyer of cars. As such, the policy will shut the U.S. largest car market to gas-only cars, forcing car emissions to move to EVs. It makes sense, I guess, out of all states, considering like that in general. Like it's that considering they do buy a lot of cars. I guess I never realized that. It would make sense, but that's I would like to see where that ends up exactly. A famed jaguar known as El Jefe, or the Boss, was spotted for the first time since 2015. Jaguars, once common in the United States Southwest and northern Mexico, were nearly hunted to extinction. El Jefe is one of the few seen in the United States in the last 50 years. Many had feared him dead. In 2015, El Jefe was spotted in Arizona. This time, he was in Mexico, 100 miles south of the border. A motion sensor camera captured a photo in November, but it took months for the image to be uncovered. Jaguars are the world's third largest cat after tigers and lions, and the largest in the Americas. Well, that's kind of interesting. And chart of the day on this post from Ride the News. What does this say? 30% of all people live in China or India, or 35% of all people live in China or India. That makes sense. China and India each have more people than North America, South America, Australia, Africa, or Europe. They each have 1.4 billion people. The globe's population is 8 billion. As of 2020, China has a 0% population growth rate, while India is 0.68. Chinese official claim that the one-child policy, which lasted from 1980 to 2016 and limited families to one child, prevented 400 million births. Wow. Okay, so I don't think we should necessarily have a negative birth rate or a zero birth rate in the sense of like population growth. I feel like that's risky, because if it goes too far back and you start having less people, that's not necessarily good either. But that's interesting. Wow. Prevented 400 million births. That's ridiculous. Okay, I think that's going to call it for our news stories. And then last but not least, like I love to end episodes off, because I do enjoy these, which I don't do all the time, is facts. Let's do a few facts before we end off this week's episode. Fact numero. What? Numero uno. I said that backwards. Fact number 1. Europeans were scared of eating tomatoes when they were first introduced. Scholars think Hernan Cortes brought the seeds in 1519 with the intent for the fruits being used ornamentally in gardens. By the 1700s, aristocrats started eating tomatoes, but they were convinced the fruits were poisonous because people would die after eating them. In reality, the acidity from the tomatoes brought out the lead in their pewter plates and actually died of lead poisoning. Oh, what? I mean, what? That makes so much sense. Lead's so bad and it can mess with you, and it was used in like everything. So that kind of makes sense. Like, wow, that's nuts. Oh, I'd be scared to eat a tomato, I guess, too, at that point. Fact number 2, humans aren't the only animals that dream. Studies have indicated rats dream about getting to food or running through mazes. Most animals go through REM sleep, the cycle in which dreams occur, so scientists think there is a good chance that they all dream. That would make sense. Fact number 3, the inventor of the microwave appliance received only $2 for his discovery. Oh, I'd be so pissed. Percy Spencer was working as a researcher in the American appliance company, now Raytheon. Then he noticed that a radar set using electromagnetic waves melted the candy bar in his pocket. He had the idea to make a metal box using microwaves to heat food, but the company was the one to file the patent. That was in 1945. He received a $2 bonus, but never any royalties. Wow. $2 bonus in 1945. I'm curious what that would be. So his $2 bonus would have been worth basically $33 today. Yikes. That's not, considering he invented the microwave, that's pretty cheap. I feel bad for the guy. Fact number 4. The Eiffel Tower can grow more than 6 inches during the summer. The high temperatures make the iron expand. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That one's not necessarily super surprising. Fact number 6. Glitter may have originated on a ranch. According to local lore, a man by the name of Henry Rauschman from Bernardsville, New Jersey, invented glitter by accident in 1934 while working on a cattle ranch. The New York Times reports that in the popular origin story, Rauschman, I don't even know what that is. A machinist, was trying to find a way to dispose of scrap metal by crushing it into tiny pieces. Plastic went in, glitter came out. The rest is commonly accepted as history. Huh. That's interesting. Okay. Fact number 6. Frankenstein's creature is a vegetarian. Both Victor Frankenstein and the creature are fictional characters in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In the classic novel, the creature says, "My food is not that of man. I do not destroy the lamb and the kid of glut and the kid to glut my appetite. Acorns and berries afford me significant nourishment." This is one of the interesting facts you should definitely share with your vegetarian friends. And well, okay. So see, he wasn't that bad. He was just looking for some acorns and peanuts. That's why he probably broke into the local bar. Fact number 7. Medicinal errors are a top cause of death. Oh no. According to John Hopkins' research team, 250,000 deaths in the United States are caused by medical error each year. This makes medical error the third leading cause of death in the country. Is that why people are scared of going to the doctor? I guess that would kind of make sense. Fact number 8. Sloths have more neck bones than giraffes. How does that make sense? Despite the difference in neck length, there are more bones in the neck of a sloth than a giraffe. There are 7 vertebrae in the neck of the giraffe and in most mammals, but there are 10 in a sloth. While they're on your mind, what? That 7 vertebrae for that long neck? Damn. How big are those vertebrae? Okay, let's go. Fact number 9. Bees can fly higher than Mount Everest. Bees can fly higher than 29,525 feet above sea level, according to National Geographic. That's higher than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. Why? And don't they need oxygen? How the hell does that even work? That's nuts. Okay. And then last but not least... Oh, wait, I think I've heard this one before. Ooh. I think I've heard this one. We might... Okay, I'm gonna do one more after this just because I know this one already. Ancient Egyptians used dead mice to ease toothaches. In ancient Egypt, people put a dead mouse in their mouth if they had a toothache. According to Nathaniel Belovsky's book, Strange Medicine, a shocking history of real-world medicine practices through the ages. Mice were also used as a warts remedy in Elizabeth, England. Okay. Last but not least, yet again, Captain Crunch's full name is Horatio Magellan Crunch. He's also been called out for only having the bars of a Navy commander. The so-called captain held his ground on Twitter, arguing that captaining the SS Guppy with his crew makes him an official captain in any book, while the captain and a fictional character. What? These are real people behind some famous food brands. I don't like that one. I'm sorry. Fact number 12. This is the last one. Those two, I feel like we're both kind of shit anyways. Paint used to be stored in pig bladders. The bladder would be sealed with a string and then pricked to get paint out. This option wasn't the best because it would often break open. American painter John G. Rand was the inventor who in the 19th century made paint tubes from tin and screw caps. Yeah, that's kind of, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess, when you don't have the modern equivalent with the tin and screw caps. You got to use what you got. So, all right, everybody, that's probably going to do it for the end of this episode. Next week, I will be recording in the studio. You won't be able to see it yet. I have some stuff in the works behind the scenes. So hopefully to make this podcast a little better. I hope you guys did enjoy. I am fine. I did not get shot at a concert. And thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, share, send to your friends, comment, message me on Instagram. I don't care. And I will see you guys all in the next episode. Peace out, everybody.